Welcome to part 4 of my series of videos showcasing my romance novel collection. And I thought for this part we would talk about Gothic romance novels. Now, I don't have a ton of Gothic romance novels. You see a few of them here from the 1960s. At one point I had over 200 of them, just within the past year or two, but I've mostly sold those off, and they are very collectible item. Probably the most collectible romance novels are Gothic romance novels because they do attract a wide audience, including a lot of male readers, more so than just regular romance novels do. Those Secrets Can Be Fatal by Monica Heath, who wrote a lot of Gothic romances. This is published by Signet Books in the 1960s. This is also another Signet book by a male writer. And then Ace Books also published a lot of Gothic romances. And so you see a few of them there. Sometimes you would see mystery novels from the 1930s or 40s or whatever. They would sort of be marketed again as Gothics instead of mysteries in the 1960s and 70s because of the popularity of the genre. Here's another, this was by Pyramid Books, The House of Ravensbourne. And sometimes they'll have the original title in there, because the original maybe just didn't sound Gothic enough, by Mary Ann Gibbs. I believe she wrote some Regencies later on. And here's a historic one, Mistress of Melon, by Victoria Holt, who also wrote under the names of Jean Plady and Philippa Carr. And this is actually, I believe, a first printing from Fawcett Books from 1961, a first printing of the paperback edition. And we can see in here there's the publication data. First crisp printing, September 1961. Now the interesting thing is this motif of the woman running away from the castle or the mansion in the night with the one window in the background. This may be the earliest, one that set the template for the Gothic front covers. If there's an earlier one, let me know, earlier than 1961. Here's some more Victoria Holt. And these were published by Fawcett, I guess in the 1960s or 70s. Sometimes the publication data isn't that complete. And, they would just give the copyright date. This one is actually published by Fontana, which was a UK publisher. And I like getting UK editions, just simply because of their rarity here in the States. And it lists more books by Victoria Holt. And so we also have Mary Stewart, who's a popular, she's classified somewhat as romance, as sort of romantic suspense. Also could just be considered a mystery writer, a suspense writer. That's also published by Fawcett. She's a very popular writer. Now, this is straight up mystery, not really romance, but it is a popular woman writer from, she started writing in the teens, I believe. Here's one of her most famous books, Mary Roberts Rinehart, The Bat, which was considered sort of a precursor to Batman in a way, or The Shadow and some of those mysterious characters. And she wrote from around 1915 or so to, these are published by Dell, to the 1940s or so. And then we have some later editions. These were published by Zebra Books, well known for their, not only for their romance, but also horror as well. And let me show you some other books here. Now these two books are hardcovers. I believe these are probably book club editions. Yeah, a lot of times you'll see where it says book club edition, which were made for the hardcover book club. So sort of like the record club version of the real CD. And this shows other books by Victoria Holt. And this is a picture of Mary Stewart on the back of this book. And so now we'll show you some other books here. Now this book is a kind of a rare one that I don't really know much about. Hamilton House. It says R8, which would indicate that it's the 8th book. But it looks like a Fawcett book, the way things are written on here by Marcia Manning. by arrangement with John Cushman. So maybe this is a reprint of another thing. Now this is from the 1960s, a romantic spy thriller. And I haven't read this. I started reading it, but it looks really fun. This is Anne Mather's very first book, well known for her Harlequin romances, but this one was actually published by Pocket Books in the early 70s. And the original book came out in 1965 in England. So if you're an Anne Mather collector, this is one to get. Fawcett published a bunch of historicals and Regency novels in the 1970s and 80s. I'll have a separate video for that, but here's another one. It looks like a French Revolution type one. There's a lot of those. Here's another, looks like a historical type romance. That's from Avon Books. Another Avon book, Answer to Heaven by Patricia Gallagher, who also wrote Castles in the Air, I believe. I used to have that book. I wish I still did. I no longer have it. D.E. Stevenson, who is related to Robert Louis Stevenson, famous writer. Her father was Robert Louis Stevenson's cousin, I believe. Now these she was a popular British writer. I don't know how popular she was in the U.S., but I actually have a British version of that same book. It's kind of hard to decide which one I want to keep, the British edition or the American, and this shows some of her books. And I'll show you some more here. Here are two books by Anne Stewart, who I've mentioned in my previous videos. And the book on the left was published by Zebra, I believe, and this one was published by Mira, which was an imprint of Harlequin for their sort of standalone writers. And finally, we have a couple books here by Janet Louise Roberts, who also wrote under the nom de plume of Jeanette Radcliffe. I'd like to get more of her books. I have not read her yet, though, but they sure look interesting. I've read interesting things online about her. And she also wrote for the Adult Candlelight series. And finally, this was probably my oddest romance book, Rebecca Brandywine, Beyond the Starlit Frost. This came out by Pocket Books in, I believe, the 1992 or so. 91. Yep, 91. And it's a historical romance, but it actually takes place in the future. Some of the players in this drama have very odd names. Well, it's hard to see there. And there's gnomes, elves, giants, and sort of it's more of a fantasy than anything else. Takes place in the year 7274, high above the planet Tintagel. It goes on and on. So if you're into fantasy, but also into romance, this is book 2 of the Chronicles of, let's see what it says here. Here ends Beyond the Starlit Frost, book 2 of the Chronicles of Tintagel. Anyway, something to look into.